Given the current political climate, I would like for you to imagine a world where there's no need for armies, instituting laws, or really bringing about governmental decrees, because the people would be inescapably drawn to a ruler who represented the virtues of the heavens. Well, that's precisely what Confucius spent his entire life trying to teach people and implement in China. So this ruler is what Confucius would call a junzi, or a cultured person. And he centers this notion of junzi around the sages because people regarded the sage kings as exemplars of good human beings. And this focus on goodness really makes sense when considering Confucianism rises as the Zhou dynasty deteriorates, leading to the Warring States period and Confucius's desire to philosophically and really politically implement the perfect human society and life in China. I really will just be examining briefly the central themes of Confucianism regarding self-cultivation. That includes the love for learning, decree of heaven, the Tao, filial piety, and Confucian virtues such as Ren and Li. So namely, Confucius wants to educate people to ultimately become political advisors who answer the pressing questions to which leaders need answers. But he also believes that the junzi is the ideal leader in a society, and I think that Confucius's idea that anyone can become junzi by way of training is really implicit in his eternal love for learning. So Confucius believes that you must always reflect on what you learn and commit yourself to a life of learning. And the decree of heaven is the approval from heaven, but that is also contingent upon the virtue of the leaders. So Confucius teaches the decree of heaven, but he also believes he teaches underneath the decree of heaven. So this really plays a vital role in his philosophy, emphasizing the central theme that every individual has a place in the natural order of things. So he supposes that we must all engage in this cosmic order, and the junzi is the individual who conforms to the order and lives in harmony with the Tao, which is the way. Confucius emphasizes the practical and social ethical problems that arise typically from a lack of order in regard to maintaining hierarchical roles and understanding proper virtues. So Confucius draws a connection between a ruler and a father to highlight the importance of maintaining specific roles in the natural order. Filial piety is within the family, and that encompasses respect for one's ancestors and for future generations. But it is also a cardinal virtue to Confucianism because every relationship is then similarly patriarchal in society. So a lack of filial piety can really have negative social and ethical implications because familial relationships establish the importance of maintaining roles. Confucius quotes in the Analects of Confucianism, "A young person who is filial and respectful of his elders rarely becomes the kind of person who is inclined to defy his superiors. Once the roots are firmly established, the way will grow." Might we not say that filial piety and respect for elders constitute the root of goodness? So, in other words, if people properly maintain their familiar relationships, they're really less likely to rebel against their leaders, making filial piety hold precedence to every other relationship. Additionally, there are also virtues that a junzi must follow. So Ren is the main Confucian virtue, which is translated as goodness or benevolence. So when an individual is junzi, he maintains a balanced thoughtfulness for himself and everyone at all times. He quotes, "To live in a neighborhood of good is fine, but if one does not choose to dwell among those who are good, how will one obtain wisdom?" So not only does a junzi have to be a good person, but they really have to surround themselves with goodness at all times because it's really impossible to become good without relational connection from others. So a junzi is interested in all of humanity and leads the propriety and the proper performance of rituals and that which brings on harmony. Li is not really what you do, it is the eloquence in the way that things are done. So a junzi does not merely rule over inferior subjects. Instead, through the teachings of Confucianism, he leads by moral character and conduct, cultivating not only himself, but a society as a whole. And in a society that is so deeply divided as it is right now, I think reform in our social and ethical ideologies is paramount for harmony in our community, whether that is Confucianist or not.